Friends, welcome into another edition of the Soccer Tejas Podcast. I'm Alex Parra. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your world, talking soccer and talking some other different topics in the many episodes we have put together. A lot to talk about related to the World Cup, to soccer in the state of Tejas, Texas, however you prefer, and going beyond. So before we get started, why don't we introduce the rest of the gang? The Brady Bunch gang, I like to say. And if any of you know Brady Bunch, maybe it's
The Para Bunch.
the Para Bunch. There you go, the Soccer Tejas Bunch. You hear them, you see them. Let's start with the lady next to me, in between Victor and myself, Laura Gomez. Laura, good day, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Hopefully, you guys are also doing well. The ones that are watching us or listening to us, and of course, my co-hosts.
Laura, what are you wearing? You're always wearing something intriguing. Tell us about who you're repping this evening, this day, this
This
morning.
jersey is from the it's a long name, Federal Triangle Soccer Club, which is a Washington, D.C. based club.
Wow.
It's a nonprofit organization that helps out LGBTQ plus and soccer kind of grow and help them kind of find a community where they feel safe playing and doing different things that involve obviously their community and soccer. So
I thought you were
check
going to
them
say.
out.
I thought you were going to say from the federal penitentiary, where maybe you might have spent
No,
some
maybe that's
time.
next week, depending on how people mess with me or not. That might be next week. So keep it up and see what happens.
Okay, lovely jersey. We won't say anything else. How about we keep it there? Victor, repping with a Soccer Tejas cap this evening, this day, this morning. Victor, how are you?
Exactly, from our lovely collection. Do we have merch for sale? I guess
Well,
if
we've got one hat that we pass
had a
around,
shop.
and that's it.
We do now. Send us an inbox.
You know what? We need to update our merch. That reminds me. I got to get on that lady. What's her name? Norma, so she can help us out with these things.
Leave her alone. She's
There you
sleeping.
go.
Enough. Well, friends, it's great to have all of you with us. Another edition. Victor informs us that this is episode number 20.
20, the big 2-0. Yeah,
Wow, the big 2-0. And we're still here, huh? For now.
we're chugging along somehow.
For now. Well, let's talk about numbers to start off, Victor and Laura and friends. I did a math, and by doing math, I mean I talked to my son Grant, who confirms some of these numbers. We are actually 260 days as we record from the opening match at Estadio Azteca of the 2026 World Cup, which will be June 11th of next year. So it's counting down, and we are 263 days, if I get my math right, from the opener at NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas, on June 14th of 2026. Can you believe that we're so close, guys? Laura, it's right around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we blink one more time, we're gonna be there at the stadium, hopefully covering the game and maybe watching a game. It's coming at us really quick. So excited for that, worried for that. But hopefully it turns out well for all three hosting countries.
Yeah, Victor, your take on the countdown. I think once we hit the end of the year, it's going to really go fast once we start 2026.
Yeah, the draw is just around the corner in December, and I think from there the storylines will rev up, accelerate much more. Around the time we get to March, I think we're going to have the playoffs, which I believe they're heading to Mexico City, if I'm correct, or Mexico, the three Mexican cities. So, I mean, that World Cup fever is right around us. Of course, some friendlies coming up. There's rumors about Argentina and Mexico. Portugal coming over here as well to face Mexico and the United States. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of those where before we know it, we're going to be right in the thick of it, and it's not going to start in June. It's going to start months before.
I agree. So we're excited about that. I'm going to get to a World Cup related topic, but completely off topic, but maybe related. What is your favorite mascot, Victor and Laura? Either one of you can begin. And it can be sports related. It can be related to any kind of endeavor. There's mascots that represent teams, that represent leagues. Victor, do you have a favorite mascot?
I think I got to give a shout out to Orbit, the Astros mascot.
Okay.
He's very entertaining. So I'll give him that.
Like
I think stands out from the Houston guys.
In baseball, maybe many of us know the Philly Fanatic, correct? That was one of the traditional, the little green monster guy or the big green monster guy. I don't know. A lot of us know that. Laura, do you have a favorite mascot?
I have several, but I want to agree with Victor. I think Orbit does an amazing job. He's funny. I think Clutch is hilarious too. Um, as far as Texas, Toro also has been upping his game in the last few seasons. Although I really don't watch the Texans, if I'm honest with you. But
Not maybe not this season either. Wow, yeah.
well, yeah, nah, I mean, I don't know, but Toro's funny. And as far as Colombia, I think that the culture of the mascot is bigger here in Colombia. I've been to Nacional games. It's Nacho. It's a green tiger.
What's
But
his
I've
name?
never
What's the tiger's name?
Nacho.
Nacho, like nachos con carne.
Nacho, sí, con carne, con queso, con lo que quieras. But it's a green tiger, but I've never seen an actual like mascot at the games how they do here. So it's curious to see that cultural thing. But I do see them in jerseys, and people love to like do memes or memes with them or whatever, but not the actual like mascot.
You mentioned here in Houston, we are really blessed with some really great mascots. You mentioned Clutch the Bear, in another world many years ago as a commentator with the Rockets alongside.
You were Clutch the Bear, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I have the brain injuries, among
That's the
many
secret.
things. No, Clutch the Bear, tremendous, entertaining, funny, everything you could think of. And this is how bad my memory is getting. Who was the other mascot that would jump from the stands and do all these athletic things? Someone's going to have to help me. Alongside Clutch, someone look up who that guy was, and I forget it. An amazing athlete, but the performances that Clutch put on back in the day were athletic, were entertaining, were funny. It was a whole production. I mean, you talk about
The green
Broadway.
guy.
Yeah,
I think it's like Turbine. or
Turbo. Yes,
Turbo.
Turbo and Clutch. Thank you, Laura. And I would be blessed to sit sideline at well, back in the day it was the Compact Center, what's now the church, and at Toyota Center.
Mega Church.
That's another topic for another day. And they put on a great show, and they were personable, and they worked hard, and it was physically and mentally demanding. But why are we talking about mascots? I guess someone will ask us, and what does that have to do with soccer? Well, it has to do with the video you're watching now. Today, Victor Laura, we got news about, speaking of Clutch, is the name of the USA.
Is that legal? Is that going to work out?
Maybe we just started something, right?
Is Clutch the Bear going to sue FIFA?
It could
I
be.
just think that it
And
really
can you win?
wasn't like. I feel offended by that. Clutch. It means they're always coming last minute. I'm not offended. I don't know. I don't know. I like it. The only original one might be the Mexica's Maple, really, for Canada.
Yeah. So let me take you through a little history
This
quickly.
is the only World Cup they're going to have.
Yeah, that's right. Canada, you mean.
Well,
Yeah.
Men's World Cup.
Yeah. So Maple, Zayu, if that's how you say it, I don't know,
I
and
guess
Clutch.
that's-
So those are the names of the mascots, and this is like the teaser that they'll be naming them. But did you know the first mascot's name? 1966, not the first World Cup, but 1966. It was Willie when England hosted. So that was Willie. Mexico in 70 had a mascot called Juanito. There you go. Very
Yeah.
well. I guess Juanito or Taquito might have been it. Someone's gonna write
Oh my
me.
God! No, pues Jesús.
Someone's gonna write me about that one. Let's see. 78, Argentina had Gauchito. Just to let you know. In 90, Italy had Ciao. And then in 94,
They always had bad names.
in 94, the USA World Cup, the mascot then was called Striker. So just to give you an idea of the different mascots that are represented. But as we go into the 2026 World Cup, friends, Maple, Zayu, and Clutch. Laura, what do you think? Are we headed in a good direction here with the mascots? This is a big part of it.
I mean, I already kind of gave my thoughts before. The names. I guess the only one that's kind of more curious, and I want to know why the naming of it might be the Mexican one. I actually went to the Women's World Cup in Canada a couple years back. I want to say like 10 years back. But I can't remember what their mascot was. I'm gonna say I have to look into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
For what country? I'm sorry, for which World Cup?
for the Women's World Cup in Canada.
In Canada, yeah, I'm going to try to pronounce this. It's French for owl, jumet.
Maybe I have to look it.
Maybe
I can't remember.
a snowy owl. That's what
Yeah,
I'm finding here.
and that was the first time I think that the Colombian women actually made it to a World Cup. So I went out there and I mean, they lost every game, but it was historic and it was amazing to be there.
But the
But I
mascot's
can't
part of
remember
the
their
mascot's part
mascot.
of the branding. Forgive me, Laura. Right? I mean, it's going to be memorable.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't
They're
seem too
cute.
enthused. You don't seem too enthused by it all.
Well, I don't know, just the names. I mean, I don't know. We'll
Well,
see.
They could have done
Maybe
better
they're
than
cute.
Clutch,
You
honestly.
think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll
like
be
I don't know, Starry or I don't know, Freedom.
Speaking of freedom,
Yeah,
speaking
we
of
could use some of that
freedom,
this.
perfect segue to maybe a little more serious topic, Laura. So those are the mascots, friends, that will be unveiled. The names were announced, but they'll be unveiled soon, and they will be everywhere as we go into 2026. But I'm going to switch gears on us and going from a very light topic to maybe something potentially a little bit more serious and important relative to what we do, to what we've done not only here on the Soccer Tejas podcast, but what we've done in our coverage of sports and other topics. Recently, we're going through the suspension of and then not hiring, but allowing Jimmy Kimmel to come back and perform his show. There are different versions of who canceled or attempted to cancel whom, whether or not it was pressure from the government. I think we're getting to a point where anytime, this is my personal opinion, and Laura and Victor, of course, I want and we want your opinion. In this country, and many of us that have lived in other countries, appreciate the value of the freedoms that we have. I don't think they're absolute freedoms because freedom comes with a responsibility. I think that we all have to have limits into the things we do and say. We need to have laws. We need to have guidelines. Otherwise, we would have chaos. But the concept of the freedom of expression that we have in this country is huge. It makes us unique. It makes us different. It makes us, I'm going to use this word, it makes us better. So whenever I sense that that's being infringed upon, that that's being challenged, I get concerned. You don't have to agree with someone's voice. Let the people that speak extremely find themselves with a responsibility for what they say. But when we start shutting down or favoring certain voices over others, that I think to me can be difficult. Now, I understand the whole, I believe, reasoning behind ABC suspending Jimmy Kimmel because of the FCC licensing. I believe that in non-FCC regulated markets, you can say and do what you want. And again, I think as long as you're an adult, you're not hurting children or breaking laws, you should be able to have that expression. That expression is important, whether it's satire, whether it's opinion. And I sense, Laura, and I'll go with you first, that may be that fine line we're walking today with the Jimmy Kimmel thing. I may not agree with everything he says, or I may agree with everything he says. I think that's secondary to, you know what, there's your microphone. Go ahead. You say and do what you have to do, and let the people decide whether or not you make any sense. So that's my opinion, friends. Laura, I'll turn it to you if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the US has always boasted to the world that we have so many freedoms, that we have freedom of speech, that we have, people can go out and say this and say that, and it's always going to be respected. I know that around the world, there's many countries that the media or even the common people don't have that kind of thing. And I think that the US in a certain way has been sheltered from things that you can or can't say compared to other countries. I do want to talk about like the freedom of Colombia too. I mean, the journalists and the media is very outspoken too because they've had to fight for those rights because at a moment the government was also going into them. So I always compared kind of like the movement in media because I'm in media, right? So I like to see the different movements in Colombia just because it's, my other country in the US. And I've always been blessed, I guess, in both worlds to kind of have that freedom. And unfortunately, in the last couple of years, the media hasn't been put in a place that many people trust. If you look at journalists, maybe 10 years ago, they were trusted. It was a good career for you to be in. People wanted to hear what you had to say and they trusted your voice. And I think that that's just something that naturally also happened with social media and all we have, influencers and yada yada that also went into that. So people became more worried or more gullible and this and that. Unfortunately, we also had people of power say don't trust the media, they don't know what they're doing, but they wanted their own agenda. So I think that, you're at home, hopefully you guys do trust us, but I always, I always look at the media as a way to also gauge how the country's doing. The One of the last examples I want to say is Venezuela. Venezuela stations started to close
Yeah.
slowly but surely until I think there's only one or two channels, and that should have like when that happened, people were leaving the country because they knew that something wasn't good. Something good wasn't happening.
Sure.
So whether you like the media or not, I think that it's still a staple of the freedom, the world freedom, right? Um, and I'm really happy that us as people that live in the US came together, whether you're from this side or the other side, but you came together for the freedom of speech, right? And like you mentioned, I think that there has to be limitations to freedom of speech as well. If you're in an airplane and you scream out bomb, that's putting other people's lives in danger, right? Or if you're in a stadium and say bomb, you're gonna cause people to do a stampede and lives might be lost, right?
Sure.
So there's limitations to that. Um, and also things that you say, there's also consequences to it, whether it might not be the government looking after you or this and that, but there's always actions and things that happen due to words and things like that. But I think that we shouldn't be limiting the freedom of speech in the sort of sense. And I'm happy that we came together at least for that sense of saying, hey, what's going on, the government shouldn't be interfering in this.
Victor, your take on our First Amendment rights, if that's the way you look at this, should there be regulation? Is the Jimmy Kimmel story something that maybe goes beyond the ratings at ABC?
It is, and I think when you dig at it, there's more layers to it than meet the eye. Obviously, uh, I believe there's somewhat of a merger that's trying to take place between ABC and another company, to where that's probably part of the reason why they decided to limit or to take Kimmel off the air and be on the FCC's good side. It wasn't the first time nor the last that we'll probably get something. I mean, we can go through the years, right? But I think we are at a time when we do have to protect freedom of speech. It's as American as apple pie. It's a First Amendment of the Constitution. But I think, Kimmel mentioned it in his returning monologue, and I want to mention it here. I think it's just as important that we have been losing it in this country, and it's freedom of the press. And I think more and more, look, we see it. Don't go that far as politics. We see it in soccer. When we cover, well, I'll speak for myself. When I cover MLS teams, we're encountering more of these hurdles where teams want to control the narrative, where teams want to control access. And, you can say, well, maybe it's not this serious, it's sports. But I think just like we see it in sports, you're starting to see it now in politics. I think it's a shame that you have certain outlets that can't cover the president and the White House, for certain reasons, or at least that we've had these problems. And again, we've seen it here. Just a couple of weeks ago, Rodolfo Borrell held a press conference up at Austin FC, the sporting director, and one of the local media outlets was denied, couldn't cover the press conference, was not invited to speak or to answer questions. And, I think maybe much more hasn't come of it because the outlet probably left it alone and said, I'm not going to make a fuss out of it publicly, as big as it probably should. But that's something that we should probably be rallying more around. A couple of years ago, I think the Dynamo got a little stricter on credentials. And again, some of this you can understand, and if there's a reasoning behind it, and if you explain it, there's some transparency to the process. Yeah, they're in their right, but it's also trying to control the message, the narrative, and another side of this. And I'll go quickly on this: the lack of independent media
Mhm.
in this country. Again, we see it here with sports, and we're seeing it. A reason why Kimmel came off the air was because a lot of the affiliates of ABC were owned by a big conglomerate, and they decided they were going to pull it off the air.
Correct.
And again, I think it's a lack of independent media outlets that you have less.
Yes.
Again, outlets fending for themselves, putting in or having the resources to be able to compete with some of these bigger outlets. Again, we can go on and on for days on where we are, but yeah, it's important that we protect freedom of speech and freedom of the press.
There are so many layers, Victor and Laura, friends, to this story. Our freedoms, freedom to express ourselves, what the media has become, Laura. You raised a great point about journalism. To me, this has become entertainment and opinion versus facts. And when someone now can say, no, factually, Alex is not wearing a red jacket, that's green. And if you think you say it's green enough times that it becomes green, where are facts? Where is being objective? That to me, a journalist is someone that isn't trying to be part of a propaganda machine, but they are trying to objectively ask questions, and then yes, when you need to editorialize or interpret based on what you see, you give your opinion. It's become very murky, and to me, this is all about entertainment now and dollars. And I get it, whatever gets you ratings. That's why I think people even are more extreme. I personally know of so-called journalists or hosts that are not that way at all in private, but they play it up because the more extreme you become, you gain followers, whether it's left or right.
Lose followers.
Or lose followers. But apparently there must be a market for some of that. So a lot to get into. But Victor, I do want to explore what you said relative to what we do or pretend to do or maybe should do better, which is how far do we take our independence to ask tough questions? You and I, Victor, Laura, we have lived it. When we're covering especially the sport we love, soccer in this country, rarely does it ever get to the point where it's critical of teams. Right now, I'll give you a perfect example. The Houston Astros are hanging in there to make the Major League Baseball playoffs, and the criticism is huge. The Texans are starting off 0-3, and there's already cause for C.J. Stroud and for D'Amico Ryans to be fired, period.
There is, but I will add here, the Texans have been notorious for denying credentials to outlets that have been critical.
So,
yes, I will give you an example before you go on.
Please.
I worked in an outlet, a Spanish outlet, when I, started my journalism career, and it took me a good season for them to give us, press passes again, because they said, "Oh, we gave it to you once." And I wasn't the journalist that was in charge of that; it was another journalist, and they supposedly what they said was that ex-journalist didn't go to all the games. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't know you have to go to all the games. And then they backtracked and said, oh, well, no, some of the games. The point was that I had to do a lot of stories to be able to get that, press pass. And I was one of the only, at that time, it was probably like 10 years ago, one of the only Spanish outlets and one of the only women and one of the only women of color. So, yeah, to what Victor said.
Well, and I'll go to it. I'll mention, ESPN, right, would be critical of the Texans. And you'd have the host on the air saying that they would be denied credentials, probably because of what they said. So, they would get the press releases, but they just wouldn't be able to attend the games. And, but you have fan blogs, right, that wouldn't have the same reach. And when you talk about the guidelines that they go by to hand out these credentials, again, sometimes, and I think especially now with the internet, we've seen a lot of teams go by way of favorable outlets, that get accredited for credentials over maybe some legitimate outlets that would have reason to be there. The same thing has happened, in certain press conferences. If Coaches get mad about certain questions, but I think unfortunately that's the way of the world today, where we see it again all the way up to the president of the United States, where he gets flustered by certain questions.
The spin, the wanting friendly fire, nice questions, softball questions, whether it's at governmental levels or at local sports teams, is the way things are shaped. And now I'll add one more layer to this, which is us as Latino Spanish language broadcasts. Of course, we're doing this in English, and I think Laura and Victor are very capable. I still have my issues, but you guys can judge that for yourselves.
In any language.
In any language, I have my issues. You're right. I think you add another layer there, Laura, which is, you know what? They don't take us seriously. I have been covering sports in this city since the mid-90s, to be fair. And it's always been, oh, by the way, we'll give the English language all of this access. Yeah, let's let one of these Spanish-speaking come in and do them a favor.
It's still like that.
And that's a shame. And maybe that's a conversation for another day. But certainly, Victor, I think we have to be aware of when organizations or entities start selecting based on the type of questions. But I think the environment, quickly, Victor, today in covering soccer the way we do, is very rarely is there a strong journalist criticizing the organizations. That's what I sense and feel every day. Now, you don't have to criticize for the sake of criticizing. Make a point, make an argument, and if you have credibility in what you're saying, it's valid. If you're just going in there to fluster or to shake things up for the sake of it, I don't think that's valid either. Victor? I'm not saying Victor does that.
No, and look, it gets to the point where at some of these teams, and I'm not speaking just from my personal experience, I'm speaking from colleagues as well. So, I'm not singling anybody out. But I'll take it to U.S. soccer. I think when you criticize the U.S. men's national team, you get PR hitting you up and trying to convince you otherwise. And that's the state of media that we're in. And, again, that's where you need outlets, journalists, to be strong enough to say, to defend themselves, to defend their point, and to continue fighting through all that, to say, listen, I'm doing this for my readers, my listeners, my audience. I owe them to be doing a job, to be critical, to be asking the questions that they want answers to, and not just here to basically, ha ha ha, he, and be glad I'm part of the press conference.
Laura, I think Victor makes an excellent point for once. No, I'm kidding. He makes many good points about what this has become. Laura, I mean, being a fan, wearing a team jersey, and covering a game as a journalist, to me, is different than someone's in there objectively doing a job. I know in the world of soccer, this has become very diluted. And what stories are you writing when you're recapping or you're taking a selfie in front of the field, and that's the end to your journalistic coverage? I think we're losing something. So I think it swings both ways, Laura, right? Teams need coverage. They grant access to people that maybe are more fans than objective journalists. Where is this headed? Because it has changed over time.
Well, first of all, I'm going to defend taking selfies on the field, okay? That has nothing to do with whether you're not
shameless self-promoter right here, by the way.
Especially
Yes.
now in this media kind of world. No, but in all seriousness, I do also want to point out something that Victor said about the conglomerates, right? When I was in school, I remember them saying, let's not, in the U.S., being a monopoly, doing monopolies is illegal. But if you really look at the media in the U.S., they're really much owned by companies of bigger companies. So sometimes I don't even judge the reporters that are with these big companies, because I know for a fact that they are told not to talk about controversial things. That's why so many of them, like, Jorge Ramos decided to go out, and do something else. And with independent, I think he is right now with his daughter. So for me, I think it's vital. And I've always said this, I think grassroots and community is community media. I think it's important. It's vital, not only for local things, but for free speech and to keep journalists with the capability of really speaking the truth without fear of, getting backlash from the producer and saying, hey, I don't want you to say this. Why did you say this? Or why did you say that? Or say, a sponsor didn't like what you said about this or said that. So I think it's important to be independent too.
Look, I think maybe we'll close this and we'll actually start talking soccer here shortly. But the balance, Laura, to your point, is it's okay to be independent, but here's, as an old man, the reality. This isn't independent. This is a business. Journalism is a business. Whether you watch a channel or read a website, they're running it as a business, which means they need to have some kind of fiscal responsibility, some kind of standards. And yes, we're humans. We are trying to figure out in the business world how to keep a business going. And if that means a sponsor says, look, I'm going to pull your money, which is going to affect all of you, you may have to think twice about saying, you know what, maybe we won't go in that direction. I'm not saying it happens, but I think that's a reality in this. I wish we could have independent journalists that did not have to answer to anyone. But the money is what rules this, Laura. It's a business.
Yeah, but there's nonprofit ones. I think that there's also legal clauses if people do decide
Sure.
to buy an ad or buy this and that and say, okay, we're giving you the space here for, I don't know, aguas frescas or, stripes candy or whatever you want, but we're going to talk about whatever we want to talk
Yeah.
about. And they already know. So I think that, again, and when I say independent or local, it might be two different things, or it might be the same thing, that they're independent, that they're local. But I do think that it is vital for communities, because sometimes the bigger outlets don't have the capacity or the space to go out and really uncover things that are local. So for me, it's very important to have those kind of grassroots, independent and local news outlet, whether they're sports or whether, local news and things like that. And I think that it's vital for a community to really thrive and have the right information.
Any negative comments, send them to attention Laura Gomez. All the good ones, send them to Alex Parra. And those of you that are kind of in the middle, send them to Victor Araiza. Let's go ahead and start talking a little bit of soccer. And we were just on Deportes Nation broadcasting the Dash versus Chicago Stars match that was played this past Friday. An important game, Laura. I'll start with you for the Dash, who are seeking getting into the playoffs. And this match was important. You were there on the sidelines living it. Positive result in general, and these points are all so important right now.
Yeah, I think that honestly, it was vital. Coming off of a three matches away from home is very, very hard for players and for the body in itself. And coming back and being able to pull this off, I think that it was vital, not only in numerical, but also for the kind of amp that the team really needs. Like we mentioned in the last podcast and also during the transmission, in the middle of these games, there were players that left because they got injured and got traded. So we had a lot of shifts going on and again, recalibrating again of this Houston Dash team. I think that it could have been a bigger, maybe it would have been a 3-0 or 2-0 if they would have gotten that penalty, but look who you're going up against, right? So we know that they have a strong goalie, a national goalie, a veteran. I mean, amazing. And then we had Jane Campbell, which unfortunately left the game due to what was it, one of her legs?
Injury, yeah, right leg strain, I believe is the latest that I have.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And then we had Abby come in, the second goalie come in, which had also had her several games as a starter. So it's not like she was, the first time she was playing a game. So, and she did amazing as well. The game was kind of slow. I think both teams were kind of trying not to let them score on each other, and they were trying to score. So at moments it kind of just got lost in limbo a little bit.
In general terms, Victor, the match. Again, all the points are important. We're watching on screen literally the goal and the fans there at Shell NRG Stadium. That was the difference. Jasmine Ryan capitalizing on this mistake right here, and and putting the ball in the back of the net. Victor, your thoughts on what we saw on the field this past Friday?
Good win, especially for what they needed. It's still a wait and see if they can manage to make this playoff push and get above the playoff line and again get into the playoffs, especially from where they were. But they needed to win at home. We mentioned that. I've been asking more of Yasmin Ryan that she needed because of how they went and got her, what she means to this team. Her numbers have to be better. She got the winning goal here, the only goal of the game. And, you need more performances from a player like her, like this, to be able to get into the playoffs. And again, not the finished product, but they're within striking distance now. And this is exactly what they needed. The goalie change, again, because of what the team had done earlier in the year and switching goalies, giving Abby Smith a chance. Now it came to pay dividends here. You had a goalie that had experience with the team, and they saw this out.
Yeah, Smith coming in definitely was not a drop in level, if you will. It gave the team confidence, and I think it was 5 straight games. Laura can correct me that she came out, Smith, as a starter. So that experience did make a difference. Let's talk quickly about Noche Latina that was celebrated at Shell NRG Stadium. Laura, you lived it at field level with fans, with the mariachis, etc. Are these nights important for our culture? And you and I, Laura, you and I, Victor, friends, I'm sure you've heard me over the years. I've gone back and forth about the importance of celebrating, but acknowledgement is important. You know what I missed more than whether it was mariachis or whether it was a cumbia or whether or not it was lambada, the forbidden dance, which is my favorite, was I wish that stadium would have been full and more people in attendance and partaking. Laura, you and I discuss this all the time. It hurts me to see empty stands. I really wish I had the magic encanto to fix that, but I don't. But Noche Latina, you lived it, you experienced it, you tasted it, right? Didn't you have a little fajita or something? No.
That's what was missing from Noche Latina. No, I mean, shout out for them giving us a shout out in the big billboard, which was about time. But thanks. I think that it was great for, to let people know that there's also Spanish transmission in case they want to listen or be able to see the games. We also have visuals of the games, some games, not all. So I think it was great. I love to see what I did like that the team did is that they gave like a paper saying I'm proud of, and people had obviously Mexico. There's people that had Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras,
Ireland. There's some
and there were
Latinos from Ireland. No,
Nigeria. So I just really love because that also kind of shows out the different cultures that we do have. The only tidbit of me, what I would want to see more diversity of what Noche Latina is. I don't know a lot of things about El Salvador or Honduras or music, La Punta and stuff like that, or like cumbia for Colombians, or does Venezuela have a specific type of music that they like? I would want a little bit more diversity in that. I do understand that there's more Mexicans in Texas, and I love the culture, but I also want to integrate that and just have a little bit more for all of the Latinos. And like what Alex said, I've also had that thing of, a whole month for Latino heritage and blah, blah, blah. I mean, we do live it 24/7 because we're Latinos, but I also think that like you said, it is important to really highlight what Latinos have done for the U.S., especially in that kind of atmosphere that we're living, unfortunately, in the U.S. So those things are important.
I'll add, and I'll come to you, Victor. Yeah, Latino and Latin American and being from Latin America is more than just mariachis and tacos, right? We know that. But it's easy for teams just to say, yeah, okay, bring a mariachi, box checked. Let's sell some tacos, box checked. Modelo or cerveza, okay, got it. And do we have a tequila sponsor? We fulfilled our Hispanic heritage. often that's the way marketing is done
Yeah,
versus
and
really
it's
digging into
also
now that's part of the culture, but it's not the
yeah,
only
yeah.
part of the culture.
No,
At
I would
least we
agree
didn't
with
have
you.
a
Like,
tortilla throwing contest.
That
oh
did
my gosh,
happen. I'll tell you
Alex.
about that one day.
Well, no, and I think that it's also, ¿cómo se dice? Falta de respeto. No falta de respeto, but just looking more into the Mexican culture. Because sometimes,
Well,
no, because
Loud, I'll
sometimes
use the
saying,
word.
oh, there's a tortilla, that's Mexican. And I'm like, wait,
Loud, I'll
like,
use the word. I'll use the word. It's called ignorance. It's what the word is.
It is. It is.
I'm not accusing the Dash of doing that, please. I want to be clear. But
No.
in the years that I've been around professional sports in Houston and the celebration of Hispanic heritage or Noche Latina, or I'll be crude when I say this, let's celebrate the Mexicans. There are meetings that I've sat in with people that don't know anything about our culture. So I go, okay, so how do we celebrate the Mexicans? Does anybody know? Okay, let's just throw some tortillas. Literally done in the city during Hispanic Heritage Celebration. But that's another story for another day. Victor,
Yeah, but I think what Laura was going to is that at least they put the Mexicans. They take them into the account. Where's the Colombians? Where's the Venezuelans? Where's the everybody else? I think the Dash did a good job with that. Back-to-back nights with the Dynamo also celebrating Noche Latina. But as you know, I don't know if I saw much crossover. I did feel like I saw more of a push with the Dynamo's game, with the Dynamo game, with Dynamo Noche Latina, around, through their social media. Maybe they just have more social media people that work for Dynamo than they do for Dash. Here's another example. The Chronicle had an article of, what are teams or what events are going on around town for Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yeah.
They had the Dynamo listed. I don't believe they had the Dash listed, at least not when I looked.
They didn't.
So I don't know what leads to that kind of lack of marketing. And then the other one is I would have liked to seen a Latino player for the Dash, but they traded him all away. So I guess
hold on.
We'll see that next year.
No. Remember what I told you guys about there being a Latina, a Cuban of Cuban heritage on the team, that her dad has Cuban.
Wasn't she injured?
Unfortunately, she was injured. The only Latina heritage.
The only somewhat Hispanic. Yeah.
Well, it comes with the territory. A year ago, there were at least 3 Latinas on the team, and that's changed. So those things come. Friends, what do you think about Noche Latina, Hispanic heritage? Does it have a place in our sports world? I think it's a great way to market, but I think it leaves some of us a little empty sometimes. Either that it's being used to sell margaritas, like Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo is something somebody made up to sell as margaritas and nachos. But what is it about our culture that goes beyond that? And I know it's difficult to put together during a game, but there are some teams that have done really good jobs, Laura. The many flags, the many countries, a taste, even if it's a little bit.
In the stadium, sorry, Alex. I will say that they did have the different flags around the stadium. Yeah. So, I know there's an attempt, and I don't know if I want to say, well, nice try or try again, or I'm happy that they're doing it, but I always see space for improvement.
Always.
So somebody put an effort into this. You can tell. I just wish again they had pushed it, promoted it a little bit more.
I wish we would have had a few more people in the stadium to celebrate it or even to criticize it. But at least they were there. Quickly before we wrap up the Dash, this is what's left, guys, in the season. Again, we're looking for playoffs. From last season to playoffs would be a great and positive move for the team. 2 more home games in early October, the 3rd against Orlando Pride, and then against the Kansas City Current, a very, very good team at home. So if you haven't caught a Dash game, here's an opportunity. And please also, if you care about the Dash, certainly in Espanol, follow us on Deportes Nation. So that a little bit about the Dash and the push for that team to make it into the playoffs. Speaking of other teams that are trying to push into the playoffs, we talk about the other team in Houston, which is the Houston Dynamo. And Victor, the team that just had another home game, you mentioned Noche Latina celebrated there, taking on Portland.
Yeah, and again, a team that needed to win to at least give itself a chance and try to make something out of nothing. They need other results. It didn't help that Dallas also won, and Dallas is, I believe, just inside the playoff line. Austin is a little bit more ahead than both of its Texas counterparts, but also a night where Houston celebrated winning the Copa Tejas trophy. So a big night for some of the supporters. And no Ben Olsen on the bench. He was suspended. I don't know if that's part of the U.S. soccer initiative for, preventive use against the refs, but I believe he received a yellow card accumulation that kept him off.
Correct.
So Juan Guerra was on the sideline. I don't know how much that led to the Dynamo looking a little bit more offensive. Certainly, I think some people are connecting those dots. But we'll see what the rest of the season leaves for them. Again, Houston needing to get the 3 points. They got the one goal they needed. Portland certainly had their fair chances. Hit the post a couple times, but in the end, Houston gets 3 valuable points out of this one.
Laura, we'll see the goal here from a corner kick from Jack McGlynn, but the U.S. national team player finding a way to make a difference, and maybe the team needs to keep that going. Mathematically, literally knocking there on the door. In a second, though, we'll see that the team is running out of games. So that dependence on other results. But what's your take on this latest Dynamo victory? The 3 points they hadn't won, and by the way, there's the goal. They hadn't won in at home. Victor, you're going to have to help me in quite a long time, since May. We see the header there from the corner from Jack McGlynn. But Laura, your take on where this team is and where they're going.
It's so funny because I was actually around that area when they scored, passing exactly the stadium when they scored. So I was like, oh, wait, they scored. And I looked up, I'm like, was it them or was it the other team? But just a little, it was funny that I was there again on Saturday. They're right now, I want to say they're in 10th place. I think I looked and they have like 36 points. I think I looked. And then Dallas has 37 points. So it's very close, like neck to neck. So I think
I'm gonna jump in if I'm not, and I'm going from memory because my computer's down here. But Dallas have one game in hand, right? Victor, help me out here. So someone look at the table.
And I want to correct myself. I believe June 28th was the last victory. So it's not take off a month from what we previously said. But it'd been a little while for the Dynamo. But yes, Dallas, I believe, has one game ahead. I think Salt Lake has 2 games ahead. Houston, if I'm not mistaken, has 2 games remaining, which is why this is a little bit of tight margins here. But again, a needed victory for their playoff hopes. They have one more home game that'll be against San Diego, and I think it's pretty much understood that it's must win.
Must win. Laura, we interrupted you. I didn't let you finish. I apologize.
That was basically just looking at the tight margin, like Victor just mentioned, that there is in the MLS and then those teams right there. And to express what I've said during the beginning of the season, it's not good enough that they just make it to the playoffs and then get eliminated in the first round and say, pat on the back,
three games.
Playoffs.
3 games left.
So let's look at that now. Exactly what you were talking about, Victor, Laura. The 3 matches, 2 away, and then the last home game against San Diego. My understanding, though, is that October 4th match could be a sellout. Tickets are going fast, and that might be a great opportunity for Houston to get that support. Victor, you're going to have to help me out here with details, but I don't believe we've had a sellout all season. Someone correct me. In 2025, no sellout at Shell Energy.
They had the Tigres game in Leagues Cup, but not in MLS.
Okay.
And that's because they got greedy in that Inter Miami game.
The Miami one.
So there you go. But regular MLS season, no sellouts. Maybe there's the opportunity here at the end of the season.
San Diego would be a big draw for some Mexican fans. Would be the first visit by San Diego with Chucky Lozano.
Exactly.
Yep.
So you friends make of it what you will. Does the team deserve, if you will, to make playoffs? Victor, help me out on the playoff picture. 7 teams go straight in. 8th and 9th have a 1-game playoff, correct? And then you go into the best of 3 series.
And And that's essentially what Houston is chasing, one of those last two playoff spots from the looks of it.
Yeah, so it looks like if they get in, it'll be tied, and then they'll probably have a one-game playoff to see if they continue. So every point, every minute, literally, is important. Victor, did you have something to add?
No, I believe the first round is best of three. Remember, they have that weird, quirky
Yeah, best
new
of three.
system.
But if you're eighth and ninth, you have a one-game playoff, correct?
You know what? You might be right. These things
Someone
change
help
every
me
year.
out.
I
I'm
forget.
sure someone, friends that are much more educated than I, will send me the memo about the MLS playoffs. So that's our coverage there of MLS, of what's coming up. Sorry, of the Dash and the Dynamo. But let's talk a little bit, Victor and Laura, about another competition that to me is a huge important.
You're right. I just got this, by the way.
Okay,
Yeah,
wait. Say
8
that.
and
Say
9
that
played-
slowly. I'm right.
You're right. 8 and 9 play each other, hosted by the higher seed, and then
Okay.
that leaves leaves 7. Does that? Now I'm confused.
I think it's top 7 are already in, but then the 8 and
Right.
9 play a one-game playoff. Then you'll have 8, and then you start your best of 3 best
Yeah,
of 3
best
series.
Of 3. There you go.
And
That's
it's
the first round.
1-8 and 2-7 and 3-6. I believe that's the way it goes. All right.
It's too many teams, is what it is.
Maybe too many teams. Anyway, I got lucky more than anything else in remembering all of that. Let's switch gears a little bit here, guys, and talk about another, I think, important competition, which is the U.S. Open Cup. And Victor, the first semifinal had Nashville against Philadelphia. Teams that are taking this seriously. But your take first on this first semifinal. We'll talk about the second semifinal and where the U.S. Open Cup final will be. But in general, how did you see this first match, Nashville against Philadelphia?
Yeah, two teams that over in the Eastern Conference are battling for the playoffs. Philadelphia is leading the Supporters' Shield race. And Nashville is right down there at number 7 for the time being. But, these could be two of the contenders, especially out of the East. Nashville have one of the top scoring guys in MLS, in Sam Surridge. But, again, for a lot of teams, and especially those who haven't won the U.S. Open Cup, this becomes an important tournament. Let's remember, though, that this year there is a different quirk, right? We didn't get the Inter Miamis, the LA Galaxies, the teams that played in the CONCACAF Champions Cup in the Open Cup because they had to send their second teams by, a change in MLS rules where teams could only compete in 2 other cup competitions other than MLS and obviously the Leagues Cup if they qualified for that. So, does that raise a question of if this U.S. Open Cup has lost merit competitively because we don't have some of the more stronger players in the best teams in the United States? I mean, I guess that's up for debate. But at least for this year, I mean, these are the last 4 teams you had: Nashville, Philadelphia out of the East, and it was Nashville that ended up coming through.
That's right. And the other semifinal, Victor, we had Minnesota taking on Austin. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but most of you know that the U.S. Open Cup final then will be in Austin. But talk to us about Nico Esteves' team going into this semifinal.
Yeah, well, again, 2 other teams are looking to win the Open Cup, and this one was a little because of the way the draw went. This game was essentially winner host the Open Cup final.
Right.
So that was a big caveat for these 2 teams. And Minnesota, obviously being at home and being higher up in the Western Conference, sort of made them the favorite. But again, this was a one-off game, and this was a big win for Nico Esteves and his squad. This was a side that, just like Dynamo, have been having their attacking struggles through the season. Obviously, they figured some of those out to get up higher in the table here, get a little more comfortable in playoff positioning. And they've been able to make a run here in the Open Cup after, of course, winning on penalties earlier in the competition at San Jose. Now getting another away win here at, a team that maybe, again, was favored over them. And they'll get to host the final, which is a big caveat from this matchup. Stoppage time goal. Very important for the city of Austin because they'll get to host the final. Maybe this is something that can start to ignite the fire back, bring fans back into the stadium because it has been a market where the novelty has started to shine off, or the shine has been starting to fade off
Sure.
in the same way as it has in Houston.
Laura, and pretty soon we're going to see that winning goal for Austin. Has the competition itself, the U.S. Open Cup, lost its luster? It used to be a much more important tournament. I think the political infighting between MLS and U.S. Soccer, who owns the tournament, and this goes back to even before MLS competition even existed. I love this tournament personally because if we had the Soccer Tejas team that came together and we won our amateur league and we moved on, we could potentially be playing in the final. It would take a huge miracle because you're not a very good goalkeeper, Laura. But has this tournament lost something, which I think something was very special?
Well, first of all, I'm not a goalkeeper. I'm an outside mid for your information. So don't
I
don't.
didn't pigeonhole you there, right? Okay, I get it.
No, I mean, I do feel like maybe the tournament has lost a little bit of shininess, if you might say, compared to
Importance?
maybe
Yeah,
and maybe, yeah. I mean, when I used to cover more of the MLS, I felt like it was a little bit more important. And I feel like even, the Dynamo always boasted saying, hey, we won this, we did this. I've always thought that, yes, it's important to have other championships and other competitions, outside of just winning the MLS. But for me, it's always taking precedent the MLS, championship. I want you to
sure.
be championship of the MLS. But, you know, it's not always fair. We don't always get to see the best team of the whole like season be the champion of the MLS. And I guess with the Open Cup, you get the opportunity of also seeing teams that have done well, or maybe that want to just concentrate in the Open Cup and also get to take home some, shiny trophy home. So I think it's good to have, those kind of competitions outside of just the regular
Look,
championship.
I love the concept of an open cup, whether it's an amateur level, whether it's at the professional level. The dream of a fourth division team coming up and dethroning a first division club, whether it's in England or whether it's here through the U.S. Open Cup system, to me is huge. As we have now a growing professional, and we'll talk about that one day. Um, um, a professional system with the USL. And remember, in 2028, the USL is going to have a competing first division. This may make it even more interesting to compete. And the U.S. Open Cup may be that tournament, the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. I say that because he's Mr. Hunt, one of the pioneers in Dallas in establishing all of this, even before the MLS in the old NASL days. But I like this tournament, Victor, because of its history, number one, and because it offers hope to everyone that wants to compete in an open format versus being based only on the strong teams, the big teams, etc. Even if it's a pipe dream, we all want to be Cinderella one day, don't we?
Well, that's what the Open Cup offers for some teams, but of course, it does get a little wacky with the way some of these things go. The drawing system, for example. I mean, Nashville could essentially say, "Why aren't we hosting?" Just because
Sure.
of a draw, right? How is it based in the what a team has done within their competitive league? So there's still things to fix. I think for a long time it's sort of become um, sort of forgotten by U.S. soccer, especially as we've seen some of the MLS teams, or maybe the league as a whole, not respected as much as maybe we would like. I would like to see some of these games also give importance to the lower division teams, maybe give them the right to host.
Agreed.
I think there's, playing on a weekend would be nice. I don't know if it has to be a neutral site, but you just mentioned it is named after Lamar Hunt. The National Soccer Hall of Fame is up at FC Dallas Stadium, especially now with the renovations. I mean, should that be a national,
Site?
hosting
Yeah,
site
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
the U.S. Open Cup final? Should there
I
be a
like that.
celebration around it? Should it maybe be tied into the the yearly Hall of Fame induction weekend. These are all things that could be done to grow the game, to grow the cup. But if U.S. soccer doesn't put any importance to it, why should we? And I think that's sort of that's sort of the reason why it doesn't feel as important as it does,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
as it should.
As it should, and it could be elevated. So we'll see. And personally, I wish Austin good luck, and I hope another Texas team, because the only Texas team that's won the U.S. Open Cup, as I remember, the Houston Dynamo, FC Dallas. Victor has never won the cup.
FC Dallas has won it.
Have they?
They
Okay,
won a couple times.
there you go. Correct. He's
A
correcting
long
me.
time ago. So
Okay,
I
okay.
mean,
He's correcting me. We'll
it's
see
hard
what
to remember.
we'll see what Austin can do then hosting Nashville. Well, friends, it's time for us to wrap up. We typically do it with the What's on Our Mind segment. And let's go first with the gentleman that was just talking, Victor Araiza. Victor, as we wrap up today's or this latest version of the Soccer Tejas podcast, what's on your mind?
I'm going to be paying attention to the FIFA Under 20 World Cup. We'll see what some of these teams can do, especially the ones from the region. Brooklyn Reigns of the Houston Dynamo will be playing for the United States. And especially in a World Cup year, could we see one of these young players raise their hand to make a last minute attempt at the World Cup roster? Someone like a Brooklyn Reigns, for example, and really take a hold of this tournament. Mexico has some young stars as well. Obed Vargas, who's up with the Seattle Sounders. Gilberto Mora who just shined with Mexico with the senior national team at the Gold Cup. And then, Panama and Cuba will be in there as well. So we'll see what they can do. I'm excited to get this thing started, see what we see in some future stars of the game.
Future stars of the game and current stars of the game. Laura Gomez. Laura, what's on your mind? Did you like that one, friends? Maybe you did. Laura Gomez, what's on your mind?
So many things, but no, let's stick to this. The NWSL announced that they're not going to play. I think they said June 1st to the 28th due to the men's World Cup 2026. I think it's a stage part. Do I agree? I mean, what I understand what they're saying, that it's because a lot of the places might be, taken up by, a game or something like that. That's what they said. And also not to have, I guess, going against World Cup games. But, not all World Cup games are interesting. They're all not going to be good. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm kind of iffy of if it should or shouldn't be. I think that the women have fought hard enough to make their own space and have their own fans and their own coverage. Not as much as they should, but that's another topic. But I don't know. If this was the opposite, would the men do the same? Would the league stop because the Women's World Cup is in the U.S.? I don't know. So I'm still trying to process it. I'm trying to still decide if this is a good idea or if it's not.
Laura, it's interesting you mentioned this because I am of the opinion of the summer of soccer, which happens every summer, is full of soccer everywhere.
It is. And like this year.
Well, there's no respect for one competition or another. It's all about, friends, I'm going to come back to it, the business. I get that this is the World Cup, that it's in North America. I get that the NWSL, logistically and otherwise, maybe has to look at that. But I don't know. I'm like you, maybe. You know what? Keep playing, keep going. But it's so tough to beat when it's on your home soil, Laura, the attention for your league. And maybe that's what the NWSL is looking at? Question mark? I don't know.
I would have to go more in depth, but what I just kind of read was that was the reasoning, because some of the stadiums were going to be occupied. And then the other one was not wanting to go head to head with, the other World Cup games.
Sure. I kind of see that. Well, that's what's on Laura Gomez's mind. Friends, what's on my mind as we wrap up the Soccer Tejas podcast? We talk a lot about the youth sport, the youth side of soccer, at least I do. Talk a lot about youth soccer. As the World Cup is coming, and we were just talking about how leagues and others are adjusting to what's coming to North America. Soon, in the Houston area and in other markets, there'll be announcements about what the legacy of the World Cup will be. What is going to be left when the games are over, when the party's over, if you will? Will our sport benefit in some way? What does that look like? And I think soon we'll be, at least in Houston, having a better idea of what that looks like for our community, for our parks, for children that maybe don't have access to club soccer, the current structure of club soccer. So that's a positive. Is there a way that we as a community, not for a couple of games, not for a month, but for years to come, can benefit from what the World Cup brings, the attention it brings, the financial benefit it brings? Not only that, but the opportunities that a World Cup can bring. So I'm excited about what's next. I'm excited about those possibilities. Of course, we will ask questions. We will guide you through what it means and how it can hopefully trickle down, and I'm using that term not in a negative way, but trickle down to the people that need it. Boys and girls that maybe don't have the opportunity will now have opportunities through the legacy of the 2026 World Cup. So that's what's on my mind, friends, as we wrap up another version of the Soccer Tejas podcast. So before we go, Laura, last word on what you're looking forward to beyond what's on your mind.
Again, it's supporting women's soccer. They announced actually that 55% of the girls, the young women that watch women professional soccers are encouraged to play sports themselves. And I think that's a big number and want to become professional themselves. And I think that that's very important for our youth. And support Latinos and local media.
Especially on Hispanic Heritage Month, right?
Especially us. That's why I said is support your Latinos during the Hispanic Heritage
There
Month.
you go. Speaking of youth, Victor, what's on your mind here as we close up? Beyond what's on your mind, what are you looking forward to?
Already answered both of those.
I know you did, but I just wanted to give you one more word.
I'm looking forward.
More.
I'm looking forward to people subscribing to our podcast.
There you go.
Wherever they can find it.
The
Spotify,
commercial.
Apple, YouTube. Leave us your comments as well. Let us know. Boycott if you want, or criticize and say who you want to boycott, whatever. Give us your comments. Let us know.
Victor,
Not boycott us.
he was reading my mind. Friends, what do you
Boycott
think?
the competition while you listen to us.
What do you think of our format, friends, as we wrap up the 20th version of the Soccer Tejas podcast? Please help us genuinely with your comments, with your suggestions about what we should cover. We look at it from our lens, but there's nothing like your lens. You're the ones at the end of the day that will support and make this successful or not. So we appreciate all of you that take the time to follow us, to send us your messages. If you catch us on YouTube, please send us your comments, your likes, subscribe, whatever all that stuff is. Please help us to grow our concept. So on behalf of our production crew, on behalf of Victor Araiza, of Laura Gomez, I'm Alex Parra. Until next time, when we meet here on what we call the Soccer Tejas Podcast.